80% of the times you reach for food, you aren't physically hungry. Not even close. And yet the hand moves anyway. Why? The Buddha identified 3 distinct hungers that live inside the human heart. Hungers that food was never meant to fill. Miss just one of them, and the craving returns before the plate is even empty. Today I'll name all 3, because when you finally see what you're actually reaching for, the grip of that longing begins, just slightly, gently, to loosen. It was the hour when night finally settles in, inside the walls of a small kingdom in ancient India, a place called Kapilavastu. Everything a person could want had been gathered in one place. Feasts that couldn't be finished, flowers with the sweetest fragrance, music that never stopped playing, a life without a single want. And yet, in the middle of all that abundance, a young man stood alone at a window, staring out, beyond the walls. What was out there? What existed in the world he had never seen? Laughter drifted down the hallway. The sounds of celebration floated up from somewhere below. But his eyes stayed fixed on the darkness beyond the walls. That night was where everything began. He left behind silk robes still warm from his body, a wife breathing softly in sleep, a son just days old, not because he loved them less, but because something in him could no longer look away. The gate closed behind him without a sound, and the darkness, which had seemed so frightening from the window, simply opened and received him. He walked without a lamp. His feet found the path anyway. The young man's name was Siddhartha, the one who would later be known as the Buddha. His father, the king, loved his son deeply, and because he loved him, he had tried to shield him from the suffering of the world. A prophecy had been spoken at the child's birth. If this boy ever witnesses the pain of life, he will leave everything and become a wandering monk. And so the palace was made beautiful. There was rich food, a devoted wife, a newborn son. Nothing was missing, not on the surface. But inside Siddhartha, something had always felt hollow. One spring morning, he asked his charioteer Channa to take him beyond the gates. Channa hesitated, but he couldn't refuse his prince. At the first gate, they saw an old man sitting by the road. His back was bent nearly in two. His skin was folded with wrinkles. Without his walking staff, he couldn't have stood at all. A body that had once been young and strong was now trembling with every shallow breath. Siddhartha stopped the carriage. "Channa, what happened to him?" "He is old, my lord. Everyone grows old." "Everyone?" "Yes. You, me, no one is spared." Siddhartha sat in silence for a long time, watching the old man. The next day he went out again. This time a man lay sick at the side of the road, burning with fever, groaning, his body no longer his to control. "And him?" "He is ill, my lord. Everyone falls ill." Then on another day he saw a procession, people carrying a body, a family walking behind them weeping. "What is that?" "That is death, my lord. Everyone dies." Tears came to Siddhartha's eyes. Whether it was grief or fear or something he had no name for, he couldn't say. He returned to the palace without a word. That evening a banquet was laid out. Beautiful dishes, ripe fruit, every delicacy imaginable. Laughter filled the room, but Siddhartha never reached for his chopsticks. He sat in front of the food and looked past it, somewhere far away. That night not a single bite passed his lips. It wasn't his stomach that was empty. On the fourth day, he saw a monk. The man wore a single worn robe and carried a simple wooden bowl. He owned nothing, and yet his face held something the palace had never given Siddhartha. A quiet, untroubled calm. Siddhartha stepped down from the carriage and approached him. "Who are you?" The monk turned slowly. "I have seen old age, I have seen sickness, I have seen death, and I am walking, searching for a way to live alongside all of it." "Are you not afraid?" "Yes, but I find that the truth lives somewhere inside the fear, so I keep walking." Siddhartha watched the monk's back until he disappeared from sight. That night, he returned to the palace. He stood quietly at the bedside of his sleeping wife and child, and before dawn broke, he walked out through the gates. The feasts, the beautiful life, all of it, left behind. What drove him out was not hunger in his stomach. It was a hunger that no palace could feed, no banquet could touch, no amount of love or comfort could quiet. The kind that lives in the chest, just beneath the ribs, and aches most sharply in the middle of everything good. Many of us have felt it, sitting at a full table, surrounded by people who love us, and wondering why it still isn't enough. Siddhartha did not leave because his life was empty. He left because he finally stopped pretending that it wasn't. Let's pause here for a moment. Siddhartha lived inside abundance. He never went without food. He was surrounded by people who loved him, and still, something inside him felt hollow. Why? When we eat and still don't feel satisfied, what do we usually do? Most of us think, eat something better, eat more, but that rarely fills the emptiness, and the cycle continues. This is where suffering takes root. Not being satisfied by food doesn't mean the food was inadequate. It means we're carrying a belief that something should fill us, that if we just eat the right thing, this emptiness will finally go away. That belief is where the pain lives. The hunger isn't in the stomach, it's in the heart, and food cannot reach the heart. That's why no matter how much we eat, something still feels missing. Siddhartha's hollowness in the palace wasn't about what was on the table. Nothing was missing from his life materially, and yet the emptiness stayed because what he was truly searching for existed somewhere beyond the banquet hall. We tell ourselves, I eat because I want to. But do we really? Have you ever drifted to the refrigerator in the middle of a sleepless night, for no reason you could name? Have you ever craved something sweet right after an argument? Have you ever found yourself eating on a lonely evening, not because you were hungry, but because you needed somewhere to put the feeling? In those moments, was it really food you were reaching for? In Buddhism, this is called tanha, a word that means craving, thirst, a desperate longing. The way your throat burns when it's dry, an urgent reaching for something to make it stop. Buddhism teaches that this craving is the root of suffering, and here's what matters most. What craving reaches for is rarely what it actually needs. Drinking salt water when you're thirsty only makes the thirst worse. Reaching for food when your heart is aching does the same. Now, one more thing worth saying. Perhaps you've told yourself, I have no willpower, I'm weak. I eat emotionally and I hate myself for it. Buddhism doesn't see it that way. There is no fixed, unchanging, weak self who always fails. On that particular night, with that particular emotion, in that particular moment, the act of eating simply arose. It wasn't a character flaw. It was a set of conditions coming together. I am someone who always eats emotionally. That's a story we tell about a self we've frozen in place. But what's actually happening is simpler. When a certain feeling appears, eating follows. It's a chain of causes and conditions, not a verdict on who you are. Seeing that chain, that is the first step. Not breaking it by force, just seeing it. That is the Buddhist way. A candle doesn't decide to burn. Given a wick, wax, and a flame, burning simply happens. And yet we never say the candle is weak for burning. And habit, and a quiet kitchen at midnight. Reaching happens. That is not a confession. That is simply what conditions produce. But here is what Siddhartha discovered. You can change the conditions. Not by gripping tighter, not by scolding yourself into stillness, but by learning slowly to see the wick before the flame arrives. So how does this show up in ordinary life? Let me paint a few pictures. Imagine coming home after a day where everything went wrong. Maybe your boss said something cutting, something that stung. You're not hungry, but you find yourself opening a bag of chips anyway. One handful becomes two, then the bag is empty, and now on top of everything else, there's a layer of shame sitting in your chest. What was actually happening in that moment? When you were criticized, something in you wanted to be understood, to be seen. That hurt didn't go anywhere, so you looked for something to cover it. The chips gave you a few seconds of distance from the pain. Your body remembered that. So the next time the pain came, your hand reached for the bag again. Your stomach wasn't empty, your heart was bruised. Or consider this, something many parents know well. Days when the children won't listen, when you and your partner keep missing each other, when the house starts to feel lonelier than being alone. And then during one quiet moment while the baby naps, you find yourself standing in the kitchen eating chocolate. Alone, secretly. That chocolate wasn't about sweetness. It was one small moment that was yours. A way of saying, without saying, I need someone to notice me. I need 5 minutes that belong only to me. And because you couldn't say that out loud, food carried the message instead. It echoes something in Siddhartha, sitting at a table full of beautiful food, unable to lift his chopsticks, his eyes somewhere else entirely. Or maybe you recognize this one. An anxious morning with no clear cause, No real appetite, but your mouth needs something in it. Gum, coffee, a handful of crackers, and if you try to stop, the anxiety somehow feels louder. Here, eating isn't nourishment, it's regulation. It's a way to dial down a feeling the body doesn't know how to hold. Buddhism speaks of something called contact. The moment a sense meets the world, a feeling arises, and craving follows. When anxiety arises, putting something in the mouth gives the feeling somewhere to go, just for a breath or two. This isn't a failing. Sometimes it's the only way through. But when we don't see it for what it is, when we don't recognize that we're using food to manage a feeling, the guilt that follows becomes its own hunger. And we eat again to quiet the guilt. The loop tightens. Food itself is not the problem. The problem is that the feeling underneath stays invisible, and invisible things don't heal. So what would it look like to pause, just once, before the hand reaches for the bag? Not to stop yourself, not to judge, but simply to ask, what is here right now? A woman in one of our Sangha once described standing at her refrigerator at midnight, door open, cold light on her face, and suddenly realizing she wasn't looking for food at all. Gone 3 years by then. She closed the door and sat down on the kitchen floor and cried. And for the first time in months, she felt slightly less hollow. The chips would have given her 10 minutes of quiet. The tears gave her back something real. So is there something small we can actually do? After Siddhartha left the palace, and after years of searching, finally found what he was looking for, he taught his students something called right mindfulness, samasati. It doesn't mean special ability. It simply means staying gently aware of what is actually happening, right now. Applied to food, it might look like this. The next time a craving arrives, before you reach for anything, pause once, just once, and quietly ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? You don't need an answer. I might be exhausted. I think I want someone to talk to. Something feels sad and I don't know why. Even just noticing that something is there, that's enough. You don't have to stop yourself from eating. Trying to overpower the craving, to white-knuckle your way through it, actually makes the urge stronger. Buddhism would say that grasping at restraint is still a form of grasping. Just one breath, one honest question, a moment of listening. That's all. The Buddha also encouraged his monks to bring their attention to the meal itself, to sit with the food before eating, and briefly consider all the conditions that brought it to them. It wasn't ritual for its own sake. It was practice in being present, in being here, in this moment with this act. Eating consciously, even for just a few seconds, creates a small gap in the chain between feeling and reaching. And inside that gap, something can surface. What was I actually looking for? This won't dissolve emotional eating. That's not a promise anyone should make. But over time, the way you see it may quietly shift. Instead of shame when the craving comes, maybe something gentler. Oh, there it is again. What's going on today, I wonder? Not judgment, curiosity. That small shift from self-blame to honest curiosity might be the most important thing, because it changes the question entirely. Instead of, why can't I stop, which is a wall, you find yourself asking, what do I need right now, which is a door. And sometimes, just standing at that door is enough. A monk once said that he had eaten the same simple meal every morning for 30 years. Rice, a little broth, nothing more. When a student asked if he ever grew tired of it, he smiled and said, I have never eaten it the same way twice. When was the last time you ate while crying, or used food to get through something you didn't know how to name? In that moment, was it your stomach that was empty, or was it somewhere else? There's no rush to answer. Just sit with it, if you're willing. Maybe it was after a phone call that left you standing in the kitchen at midnight, staring into the open refrigerator like it might offer something the voice on the other end couldn't. Maybe you ate the whole bowl without tasting any of it. And somehow that was the point. The refrigerator closes, the bowl is empty, and you are still there, still holding the thing that has no name. The cravings we explored today, the ones hiding inside our hunger, are rooted in something Buddhism calls Wan No, the defilements of the mind, and we unpacked that more carefully in a previous teaching. On the night Siddhartha left the palace, he didn't solve anything. Old age was still out there, Sickness was still out there. Death was still out there. None of it had gone away. But that night, he stopped looking away. The same may be true of food and feeling. Eating emotionally isn't a flaw, it's a signal. Your body telling you, gently, in the only language it knows, something is here, something needs your attention. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to be ashamed of it. You just have to be willing to listen, even for a moment. Siddhartha left the palace and met an old man, a sick man, a dead man. At the time, it must have been terrifying, but those weren't frightening things. They were real things he'd simply never been allowed to see. And when he finally saw a monk, walking in quiet peace alongside all of it, something in him stirred. On the other side of your hunger, there may also be something you haven't yet let yourself see. When you're ready, just turn toward it, gently. Thank you so much for being here with me today. Not fixing it, not fleeing it, just the way that monk walked. One step, then the next, carrying everything and resisting nothing. That is enough to begin. Maybe that's all awakening ever is, not a grand arrival, but a willingness to keep walking toward what's true, even when your hands are shaking and the road is dark. Siddhartha didn't leave the palace because he had answers. He left because he could no longer pretend the questions weren't there. And some nights, reaching for something in the kitchen at midnight, neither can you. Pause. Whose face came to mind while you were listening today? One story a day. In a week, your words will change. In a month, your eyes will change. In a year, the same world will look completely different.